See this hair? This is what I'm saying. This is why this is why I have to wear wigs. Okay, this week sometime I'm gonna have to do something here. I had one of those thoughts pop into my head where they kind of continue to go, and then pretty quick I have an idea for a video that I want to make, or a message I want to say in a video that I want to make. So this is why I'm making this video. You know, people who are atheists and say they're atheists and challenge Christianity, it's driving me crazy. We're not threatening. People take it like it's this huge threat. I really think a lot of people need the security of the belief that there's some kind of life after death, you know? That there's a place you go when you die, you don't cease to exist, and when you lose somebody that you love dearly. I just had a friend lose his mom, and he's really hurt over it, and you know, as an atheist, I'm not going to say anything to him about, well, you know, you're never going to see her again because there's no such thing as heaven. I'm not going to say that to him. I'm not going to, you know, say a bunch of things that I think that aren't true either. But you know, I don't think being an atheist prevents me from saying things like, you know, you will always have your mom with you. You know, you're her legacy. You know, you take her with you. Stuff like that. But it occurs to me that just because I think that there's no such thing as this God, this biblical God, and I don't think Christianity is, not only do I think it's not true, but I think it's a very destructive and vile religion. I really, the longer I'm away from it, the more I see it that way. I see it as something just a poison. I mean, Christopher Hitchens, said it so well. You know, when he compared it as poison, it is poison. But anyway, I don't want to digress too much on that. Just because I think these things about Christianity doesn't mean that, or just because atheists in general challenge this belief system and say there's no such thing as God because there's no evidence anywhere and there's no proof anywhere he doesn't manifest himself in any way, shape, or form, and there's as much evidence for Jesus as there is evidence for Santa Claus. I mean, all these things that we say that are, I'm sorry, true, doesn't you know, the first reaction a Christian will have when they're rendered to the point where they can't argue or whatever, or maybe they're starting to doubt, the first thing that pops into their head is, there's no such thing as heaven, and there's no such thing as hell, there's no such thing as da-da-da-da-da. It's like, did I say that? You know, just because your religion is wrong, just because your God doesn't exist, just because probably no gods exist, why would we need gods? You know, I wish people would just think about this. Why? This is the most primitive imaginable kind of way of looking at the world. Oh, you know, there's a God up in the sky. You know, I mean, how far we're like, people who think that way are like just the same as the guys who worship the Greek gods, you know. And how long ago was that? Okay, so it's primitive. It's incredibly primitive to think that everything is controlled by some super deity, you know. But whatever. But just because atheists say there's no such thing as a god or gods, why does that take away everything that you like to think is true? Why does that threaten? See, I don't think my atheism or anybody's atheism are challenges to this belief system, or any of the Abrahamic belief systems for that matter, immediately means there's no such thing as heaven. There's no such thing as an afterlife because I don't think there's gods, or there's no such thing as gods. Why do you think that? Why is that a threat? See, I actually think of myself as a rather spiritual. God, why am I talking funny? I had coffee. Anyway. I consider myself a rather spiritual atheist, because I still entertain the idea that I may see my dad again in heaven or wherever, whatever it's called. I don't really deep down inside, I really don't expect to. I really deep down inside think that we just cease to exist. But I have not completely let go of the hope that maybe there's something else, you know? And maybe there is something else, just because how many religions have there been since humans crawled out of the trees, right? How many religions have there been? How many gods have there been? And just because this one religion and this one idea of this super being isn't true, why does that take away? Why does that immediately mean there's no such thing as heaven? You know, the idea of heaven or a place like it, has been around forever. You know, this idea of an afterlife. And, you know, I don't know if that means anything. I really think it comes down to human arrogance and the desire to continue, the desire that, the world can't possibly exist without me in it. I'm so important, you know, and I'm too important to die. You know, it's kind of an egotistical thing, you know, and humans are greedy. No matter how long you live, it's never long enough, you know, and even people who lose loved ones, you know, whether they die when they're children or they die when they're 100, you still want them. I mean, you never want them to die. My grandma died when she was 100, which is a really old age, and I didn't want her to die. I grieved as much when she died as I would have grieved if, you know, somebody in their 20s died. It doesn't matter how old somebody is when they die. It's a horrible thing to lose somebody you love, and you want them to go on and on and on. It's the same with animals, you know. You have an animal you love, and, you know, like my little Tika, I adored her, and when she died, she was 19 years old. Doesn't get much better than that for a cat, and I still grieved. It just ripped my heart out when I lost her. So it's just the way it is. We love life. We don't want it to end. We want it to always be. It's like we can't get enough of it, which is a good thing. It's a good way of looking at life. Life is a wonderful thing, and of course we want as much of it as we can. So I think hoping for an afterlife or life to continue somehow in some way after we die is so normal, you know. Whether or not it does, who cares? Why not have that hope? But don't live for it. That's the thing that I think is so destructive about Christianity. It teaches people to live for this afterlife, and this life is not, this life is just a hiccup, you know. This life is just a moment in the dawning of the day. There's a song that has that line in it. I think it's a Keith Green song, actually. No, it's not just anything. It's the life. It's the life that we get to have, and it's a huge privilege to be here, and it's a huge privilege to exist and have a shot at something, you know, to make something of ourselves, to make a difference for somebody else. You know, who cares? I used to think being famous was like the thing, you know, until I woke up and realized, you know, how many famous people, even 20 years ago, are remembered today now that they're, you know, they're dead, they're gone. How many people remember them today, you know? Even rock bands that were huge when I was a kid. If I talked to a kid today and mentioned a rock band from the 80s, they're not going to know what the hell I'm talking about. Fame is so fleeting. Fame means nothing. What carries on is when you make a difference for somebody else in their life. And you might not even be, they might not even give you the credit. They might not even realize that it was you that made a difference. Or maybe they'll think, maybe it'll come across to them down the road, or maybe it'll never come across. But just the fact that you did it makes your life worth something. Just the fact that you made a difference for one other person makes your life count. And I say live for your life. You know, if something else is after you die, it's gravy. It's, you know, yay. But because we don't know it, this is all we have. So I guess what I'm trying to say in this roundabout way is, and Christians should not look at atheists or people who don't believe the same way as they do as a threat to this thing that they find so important that they must believe in, which is life after death. Seeing their loved ones again. You mean there's no heaven? Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat. I didn't say there's no heaven. I didn't say there was an afterlife. I said, I don't think there's such a thing as God. Why does all these other things hinge on this one thing? Oh, if there's no God, there's nothing. No, that's not what I'm saying. I said, I'm saying there's no such thing as God. I don't think there's such thing as gods. But whether or not there's something after you die, that's a whole different story. I've made other videos. I've seen things that make me wonder, and maybe there is something. I highly doubt it. There's always that. I always have to say that after, because I'm an atheist. I highly doubt it, but I haven't closed the door completely on the idea that maybe, because there's always this unknown. There's always this unknown. We don't know, and nobody can come back from after they die and tell us one way or another. So it's always a mystery. And, in a way, it's kind of cool that it's a mystery. Because it's a mystery, you can always kind of have that little hope in your heart that maybe you'll see somebody you lost again, or But, and there's nothing wrong with having that hope as long as you're not living for it and discounting this one precious life that we get to have, that we know for sure that we get to have. So, and then the other thing I wanted to mention, kind of in line with this, is I've been criticized for attacking Christianity. Oh, you're just as bad as they are because you're basically promoting atheism like they promote their religion. Well, that's kind of true and kind of not true. It's true because I was a Christian for such a long time, that I'm hardwired. Since I was 12 years old, I was hardwired to share what, this is a wonderful thing. You're supposed to share it with other people and try to get them to see the light. This is how I've been hardwired up until about 5 or 6 years ago. This is how I was. So people don't just change how they're hardwired. I found something wonderful I kind of want to tell other people. And so yes, in that way, I'm kind of the same. I'm kind of doing the same thing they do. That, of course, I'm not telling anybody that they're damned and going to hell if they don't believe the way I do. Damn, this tickle. But at the same time, speaking to somebody who lived that for such a long time, I know the reason I lived that for such a long time is because I never heard any other conflicting message. I only ever heard the things that I wanted to hear, and hear the things that I wanted to believe. I only ever had reinforcement all the time that this was the only truth, that this was the only thing to believe. Everybody else was wrong. And so when somebody finally, or it was a couple things actually, broke through that, it shook me up really a lot, and then I found myself wishing I had heard that a long time ago. So I understand that Christians walk around hearing the same thing all the time. If they don't ever hear anything else but the same message all the time, they're never going to have any hope of thinking in any other way except the way they think. If they only ever hear the same message, they're never going to imagine any other perspective or any other way of looking at the world. So I like to think that I'm doing a good thing. When everybody's in a room and they're all singing off key, they're all going to think they're all on key, right? They're all going to think they're in tune. And if they're out of tune, if they're singing off key, and what the right key is, you're going to try to sing the right key. And it's really, really hard to do that when everybody's off key and you're trying to sing the right key. It's really easy to pull down to the wrong key. So you sing as loud as you can the right key, to try to, instead of being pulled down to the wrong key, pull others up so they're all singing on key. I know it's a terrible analogy, but that's kind of how I feel. There's a huge majority that are singing off key, and I know that now I'm sounding arrogant. I know the right key, and they're all wrong, and I'm right. But I do really think that there's no such thing as God, and I really do think that the thinking is poisoning our society. So I see that as the wrong key. I see that as a bad thing. I see that as a lot of good people trying to be right and missing the mark. Because they're following something, if they would just read their holy book and they would just read about this thing that oh, God is good, God is great, da-da-da, God cares, God answers prayer. Really? You know, if they would just challenge their own belief system, if they would just read about the creation of the Bible and how it came to be and how their religion came to be, not just the same old crap that they get all the time from their church or, you know, the people that keeps parroting the stuff that they want to hear over and over and over. You know, of course they're going to never know that they're anyway. So I think I've said what I wanted to say. I don't want to keep going because I tend to do that and repeat myself, and the video becomes 30 minutes long. So I hope I kind of got across a little bit what I'm trying to say. I don't think Christians should look at atheists like we're some kind of threat. When we say that we don't believe in God, we don't believe in gods, we don't believe in the God, we don't believe in the super deity, whatever, the sky and the thought cop. You know, we think that we could actually know the difference between right and wrong without a fucking guidebook telling us. You know, it's easier than you think. Don't need the stupid guidebook. But anyway, it's not a threat to Christians that there are atheists that say that there's no such thing as God. It doesn't unravel the possibility. I mean, if there is an afterlife, there's an afterlife, no matter what, you know, people believe. You know, and we're all going to find out about it when we die. But I really think if there's an afterlife, the very last thing that it is the way Christianity has depicted it. I don't think it's a place where good people go here and bad people go here and they're punished forever. I really don't think that's the way it is at all. I think that you take whatever you have in this life with you and carry on your journey. If you ever read the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull, this is how I imagine the afterlife, if there's such a thing. That's how I imagine it. And it's an excellent little book if you've never read it. So anyway, if you've been watching, thank you. Happy New Year.